Oh hey, welcome back to TinyBlueGames. My name's of course Seesaw or Chris, and today we are making another MMO comparison video for you. I don't know why I said we, it's just me and my lonely videos. But today's topic is questing, which is such a big part of MMOs. We're going to take a look at some of the most popular MMOs and see how they handle quests differently. In today's video, we're going to be looking at World of Warcraft, both classic and retail, Guild Wars 2, Final Fantasy XIV, The Elder Scrolls Online, Old School RuneScape, and Star Wars The Old Republic. Now, just before we get into today's topic, I want to give a brief overview of how long I've been playing each of these games, because I think it really does change your perspective of the game depending on how long you've been playing it, and as a viewer, it's always nice to know this. So, taking a look at my brief MMO history in years played for some reason, we have at the top World of Warcraft Retail. That's not all in one long spree. I've taken several breaks throughout the time. Next, we have Guild Wars 2, followed by Final Fantasy XIV, followed by The Elder Scrolls Online, followed by Old School RuneScape, followed by World of Warcraft Classic, and then finally we have Star Wars The Old Republic, which I've really just started playing a bit, but it does have pretty awesome quests. Of course, the flip side of this is how much I've been playing each of these games in the past year, kind of showing my more recent experience of the games. This year I've played the most Final Fantasy XIV, followed by Guild Wars 2, followed by The Elder Scrolls Online, and then the WoWs, I guess, combined, and then Old School RuneScape, and finally Star Wars The Old Republic. The final piece to this puzzle is that I am a ArenaNet or Guild Wars 2 partner. Does this mean I won't say anything bad about Guild Wars 2? No, I love saying bad things about Guild Wars 2. I love saying good things about Guild Wars 2, but with any game I try to do a good balance of pros and cons when discussing any subject. It's just important that you know that going in. It also does mean that there are 2 sponsored links in the description. If you do want to give Guild Wars 2 a try, either the free version or buying one of the expansions, and you do use one of those links, it does help out the channel a lot. Finally, one of my favorite parts of these type of videos is doing some sort of poll or survey to get your guys' opinion on the subject. In the last video where we talked about mounts, we tried out Google Forms. This was a huge success. I've had a lot of people going through the questions. It's like a 2-minute survey, but it does allow you to share your thoughts a lot more than any other poll we've done in the past. And I've been collecting a ton of results, and I actually hope to do a kind of follow-up video, maybe a month out from when the video initially launched. And with that, we'll look at the results of the survey, we'll look at some of the comments below, because there's always things in these videos that I forget to mention. In the mount specifically, there's a lot of people who are bringing up other games that do mounts super cool, or certain pieces of mounts that I forgot in the games we were talking about. So I think combining all of those things and doing a follow-up video is a really cool way to continue this series. So with that, if you haven't done that survey, if you haven't seen that video, you should check it out now, because we'll probably do that follow-up video in about 2 weeks. And hey, why not subscribe so you don't miss it? And with that, there will be a survey at the end of this video that you'll find in the comments below, in the description of the video, pretty much anywhere I can put it. But yeah, let's jump into the video. So obviously quests are very important to MMOs and to RPGs in general. Often when you first enter a game, the first thing you will see is a quest giver with a big yellow exclamation mark or whatever their quest symbol is above their head, unless they don't use quest markers, in which case someone might just sprint at you and ask for your help. This kind of sets the tone for the game. Either there are going to be MMOs or games that are focused on very linear story progression that do have a chain of quests that lead to a big story that you have to do and you can't escape it no matter what you try, or you're going to have more open games that do have quests in the world, but they're kind of optional. They kind of add little tidbits of lore to the world and give you different advantages. Speaking of advantages, you have a quest right now to give me an advantage if you toss a nice fireball at that like button. It really does help out the video, it helps me grow as a channel and create more content for you lovely people. Of course, you don't have to, and if you dislike this video, you should probably dislike it. But yeah, that's the sales pitch, we're sticking with it. Let's continue. We're going to start this video by kind of chronologically going through how I discovered quests in MMORPGs. The first quest, obviously, I did was in MapleStory, but quests were kind of bad in MapleStory, so we're going to skip that little step and jump right into RuneScape, which introduced me to my first ever quest, probably one of the easiest quests I've ever completed, which is also excellent, and a quest that I still remember how to do when I start that game to this day. And for those of you who saw at the start of the video, I've really not played very much RuneScape. It was a game that my brother played a lot. I tried it, I just, I couldn't catch shrimp over and over again for hours back in the day. For some reason, it's more enjoyable now, but it didn't catch fire for me back in the day. But it is a really cool example of quests that are kind of scattered throughout the world and not something that you are necessarily forced to do. Now, upon entering the game this time, I actually realized that there are symbols in the world for quests, which sounds pretty ridiculous, but I don't know. I must have not paid attention to the tutorial the first time when I was a kid. But there are quest markers. You can go to those quest markers and ask, hey, how can I help? The first quest you are introduced to is a nice chef. I think this is the first quest. I mean, it's in the starting zone. I'm gonna go with it. All you do is help him bake a cake. You need to get some ingredients. It teaches you a lot about how the world works, how you can gather different resources, how you can cook, bake, I don't know. And it does give you some pretty good experience. Now, like I mentioned, quests in RuneScape aren't really essential to your gameplay, but then again, it's pretty open and nothing's truly essential to your gameplay. You're kind of shaping your own story here, so you can definitely pick and choose what you want to do. If something sounds fun, you can go for it. If you look at the rewards beforehand and you know what you want to do, that's also a great way to tackle things, because a lot of the quests do offer serious rewards or a lot of experience in a specific part of the game. Another cool thing that I discovered while I was most recently in old school RuneScape are these things called paths. And these are kind of like a combination of a bunch of quests that will help you achieve a specific goal when starting the game. For instance, if you are someone who's interested in getting their combat skills up higher right away, they will kind of give you guidance on how to go about doing that and give you some rewards along the way. Once again, this is optional things you can do if you're kind of looking for more of a guided tour through the game, and is definitely something that you can just blow past if you aren't interested in that. All right, I'm already gonna go ahead and break my own rule about doing this in chronological order of how I experience them, because we're gonna talk about World of Warcraft Classic before we speak about World of Warcraft Retail, because I think that just makes sense in terms of the evolution of quests in this game. And when we're talking about World of Warcraft Classic, a lot of the bare bones essentials to the quest are still the same. For instance, there is a golden or yellow exclamation mark signifying that there is a quest to get, and there is a question mark when you have a quest that is in progress, and then a yellow question mark when there is a quest that is done. Now, there are a few things that are missing, notably all the other types of quests that are now in WoW, but one of the biggest difficulties for people who are experiencing World of Warcraft Classic after playing World of Warcraft Retail is that there is no quest marker really of how you complete the quests. For instance, you get the quest from the quest giver, and it's really up to you to figure out where you need to go, what you need to kill, and how you complete the quest. Now, the quest itself does give you all the information you probably need, so it is kind of forcing you to take the time to read the quest, engage with the story, and really enjoy the world. Now, obviously, both in Retail and Classic, there are certain add-ons and stuff like that that can change this experience, but in terms of how the base game is created for you to play, there's a lot more emphasis on exploring the world and really diving deeply into what the quest is asking. Oh, and the quests themselves are typically a lot more difficult. Killing the creatures to begin with is a lot harder. I can count countless deaths that I died to stupid little rat things, as well as the actual chance of getting items from different quest creatures. And don't even get me started if there's a bunch of people in that zone trying to do the same quest as you. It gets really, really difficult pretty quickly. Oh god, and if you're getting hunted by someone, my goodness. So All of this on top of it really does make Quest quite a challenging experience, which can be frustrating for people who aren't used to that, but the big flip here is even doing the most mundane quest and actually getting to the point where you can turn it in and get your tiny bit of experience feels like a pretty big accomplishment, whereas doing quests in retail WoW, specifically at the start of the game, is like, okay, when's this going to be over? When am I going to get to max level? That brings us to World of Warcraft retail, which is really where I learned most of everything I know about quests. Back in Wrath of the Lich King, I would use Carbonite to tear through some quests on my way to max level. Now, quests in World of Warcraft have gone through many different iterations as the game has progressed, and most notably in Shadowlands there are some big changes coming to the leveling experience. We're not going to tackle this in this video as I don't have footage from the betas, and I haven't really played through it myself as I'm kind of waiting until Shadowlands launches to deep dive into how that experience has changed. All this said, there will be a future video highlighting how things have changed and my opinions on them. So with that out of the way, let's talk about some of the bigger changes that have happened throughout the years of World of Warcraft. The first of which is the change in how endgame quests are handled. Now, we've seen lots of different iterations to how endgame quests are handled. Notably, we've kind of gone from just dailies and little hub zones to these world quests that happen, as well as this mission board, if you can even call them quests, and a lot of different little steps in between. The big thing to take away is that there are quests that happen at endgame that you can do on a repeatable nature, either daily or weekly, and they give you rewards to help progress your character. This is something that is a core part of the game because World of Warcraft, like a lot of MMOs, try to keep people playing the game once they have technically beat it by getting to max level. This is of course a sick joke, as you never truly beat World of Warcraft, it just beats you. The other main way that quests are used, if not for character progression and leveling, is to deliver the story. And this is usually done through quest chains and different zones or through different expansions that kind of bring together the narrative of the game. This is one of the main issues that Shadowlands is hoping to fix, where currently in WoW you'll go to a new expansion to level and you will leave maybe a third way through the quest chain of the story, so you're kind of doing a whole bunch of non-completed stories in a row, which doesn't make for a great new player experience. The other part of this is how the story is delivered once you do get to max level and they keep progressing it. In Battle for Azeroth, we saw something called the War Campaign, which essentially is just the next few steps of the story mission, and they kind of just keep adding to that, and typically in order to unlock different zones and core features to the game, you have to complete it. It's kind of become, in essence, the main scenario quest of World of Warcraft, if you're familiar with Final Fantasy XIV. So it'll be interesting to see how that changes as time goes on, but typically there is some sort of quest chain that continues as the story progresses once you've hit max level. From WoW, I jumped into Guild Wars 2, which tried to handle questing very differently. Now, the very first iteration of quests in Guild Wars 2, and you can still experience them while leveling today, are something called hearts. And hearts are essentially different zones in a map that allow you to progress a progress bar to complete the heart and get rewards. Usually these rewards included experience, some karma, and maybe a vendor that offered you non-essential items. So they were kind of underwhelming when you completed them. The main reason you probably would try and complete all of them was to get something called map complete, which was an essential part in getting legendary weapons. And hearts, they've gone through a few different iterations. I mean, Guild Wars 2 in general, one of their biggest issues and maybe strengths is the fact that they try to reinvent the wheel of their game over and over again. And hearts were definitely one of the parts of the game that a lot of people didn't love. The benefit of them was that you could explore any map you wanted and kind of find your own way through the game, which definitely was in line with how they wanted to present the game. The downside to this was that A, it wasn't something that MMO players were used to, and B, it made the hearts feel, I would say, not super meaningful. In addition to this, there was no usual quest log that would sort of list which hearts you were in progress of doing and like which ones you had to do, which ones you've completed. All you had was a little marker on the map that said, you know, maybe you were done 3 out of the 15 hearts on the map, which was a little bit less than most people were used to. In terms of the actual story, this was originally delivered through the personal story, which was kind of a bunch of instances that you would unlock on different levels on your character, and would give you some explanation of your role in the world, and how the bigger story, specifically of Zaitan at the start of the game, progressed throughout the rest of Guild Wars 2. As time's gone on, this has shifted into the living world content, and has become a tremendously better way of delivering content, where we have every character voiced in these very well put together scenes that flow with the actual gameplay, as opposed to having them in sort of cut out scenes where people are talking and you're very much wanting to skip them. So this has really shifted into something very nice, and I think it's one of my favorite ways of delivering story content amongst most of these games. The final piece to this puzzle is events, and a few games have kind of, like, I think most big MMOs have explored ways to have quests that feel kind of more organic to the land. For instance, in World of Warcraft, you have world quests. In Final Fantasy XIV, you have fates, and you have different events in different games. In Guild Wars 2, we had events at the start of the game, and you still have events, but as time's progressed, they've led to these kind of meta events, which are larger scale events that happen in the newer maps, and they kind of tell a story of the zone as it unfolds. Maybe there's a big boss that attacks at certain points, or maybe you're trying to battle to control different sections of the map. But what it really forces is interaction with the environment, as well as interaction with other players. These are essentially the group open world quests that you can engage in at different times. From Guild Wars 2, I jumped into Final Fantasy XIV. And if you've heard anything or played Final Fantasy XIV, you'll know about the main scenario quest, which is one of the biggest features of the game and has a lot of positive and negative feedback around it. We'll start with the positives. The positives is that Final Fantasy XIV has a very epic and interesting storyline, specifically as you progress through the game through different expansions. The negative sides to the main scenario quest is that it is long and tedious at parts, and it's absolutely required to do. It's even kind of the case where instead of looking at your level in terms of how close you are to endgame, you should actually look at your progress through the main scenario quest in terms of how close you are to doing endgame content, which is a super big mind shift for a lot of MMO players where usually level rules all. So it's kind of interesting that way. There's a lot of negatives with the quests themselves. Some of them do get boring and tedious. Obviously, the game is slowly working on trying to cut out some of the tedious parts of the quests, notably in a patch happening this August. They are going to cut out some of the Realm Reborn stories quests that are more tedious and kind of, you know, shorten that up a little bit. I don't know if it'll be enough to make it a breeze in the park, but it definitely helps. The other part that I've noticed as someone who's played a lot of games like Guild Wars 2 and The Elder Scrolls Online that has a lot of voice acting is that there is voice acting in some of the main scenario quests, but definitely not all of them. And it's kind of a weird experience where you'll be reading through a bunch of quests and then all of a sudden it's time for you to listen to them talk, and then the quest right after that won't have voice acting. It's very jarring, because when they do the voice acting, when they do have the music, when they do have the cinematics, it really makes the quest very engaging. And yes, obviously reading the quest can be quite engaging as well, depending on how interesting the story is, but I think the bigger issue is the flip-flop between them. And this is something I've experienced both through the Realm Reborn story and the first expansion in Heavensward, and it's something that hopefully as time goes on starts being more and more voiced, but it's something that I don't have enough experience on as I have not finished all of the main scenario quests in the game. So hopefully if there are people in the comments that can kind of give you a bit more of a feel of how that progresses and how things go. The one thing I have heard from a lot of people is that the main scenario quest is getting more and more epic as time goes on. Another big part of Final Fantasy XIV is its clearly defined different types of quests. So you have the main scenario quests that we've already talked about, then you have things called job quests, which are class quests that really progress the story of each of the jobs in the game. These are done super well and actually make each of the jobs that you can play have a very engaging story. Some of them are going to be more interesting than others, depending on your tastes, but every single job does have a unique story to it, which is really cool. It's essential to do for the job because it does unlock different skills that you would not get otherwise. On top of that, we have just generic side quests that add little pieces of information to the world, as well as unlock quests. And these are something that are more unique to Final Fantasy XIV. These are quests that will either unlock optional dungeons, they might unlock the ability to fly mounts in different zones. Pretty much they're just quests that have this sort of blue cross on them. And if you come across them, you probably should check them out because they probably offer you something awesome in terms of gameplay. Finally, we've already kind of discussed this, but Final Fantasy XIV has these things called fates, which are pretty much events in other games. They're little areas on maps that will eventually turn into an event where you can kill creatures or kill a boss or rescue people to get some experience. So it's kind of their way of making quests that are more spontaneous, as well as kind of group quests where people can join and work together to accomplish the same goal. Next, we have the Elder Scrolls Online, which offers a lot of the traditional mechanics you'll see in quests in other games, such as a story quest, such as side quests, such as events and zones. The biggest thing that the Elder Scrolls Online does differently is that every single NPC, be it a story quest, be it a random side quest, is completely voiced.
Help us get revenge for generations of slavery. Find Bettina Volek. Lure her to her family's townhouse. Bring her there, and we will have our revenge.
And this offers so much immersion into the world. It really feels like you're just playing a single-player game if you want. A lot of people, have differing opinions on how good certain parts of the Elder Scrolls Online is. The biggest thing that everyone agrees on is that the questing experience alone is really, really awesome. If you're someone who's just starting the game, and even with the very base game, none of the chapters or, expansion-esque things, there is so much content for you to experience. You can go through the game and learn about all these different zones, all these different characters, all these different guilds, NPC guilds that kind of have their own stories, like the Mages Guild and stuff like that. There is so much to explore. It's wonderful. The one downside that a lot of people talk about, especially for new players, is that you're often presented with the most recent chapter if you do buy it, or a recent chapter that's kind of been added to the base game, and because of that you might not necessarily be pushed into the game in chronological order, which can make it confusing. A lot of people kind of want it to be that you start at where the game should start and work your way through the zones. That kind of makes sense, but it's not necessarily the case. The benefit of the game is that you can travel pretty quickly and freely throughout the world, so if that is something that matters to you, just look it up online and kind of see, okay, I'm starting here, I should actually start here, and that might give you a better experience of the overall story. Something that really goes above and beyond is the fact that these voice-acted characters are present in dungeons, in raids, and instance content in general. It's like the entire game elevates quests to another level that you just don't see in other MMOs, and it really does add a level of storytelling that you don't experience in most multiplayer games. Finally, this brings us to Star Wars: The Old Republic, which is easily one of the best MMORPGs on the market for questing. It takes the voice acting from the Elder Scrolls Online and even steps it up one little notch further, as it does voice your own player character.
Watch your back, friend. And don't worry, it'll be all right. He can't kill us all.
Thanks. That means a lot coming from a beautiful girl.
You're cute. Just watch you don't get yourself killed.
Which, to be fair, so does Guild Wars 2, but this game actually gives you a lot of different decisions on how to reply and interact with NPCs in the game. It feels like you are part of a living movie of sorts. It's super, super cool, and it really does engage you with the overall gameplay. In terms of the actual quests offered, it has a lot of similar categories of quests that we've already discussed in other MMOs, such as story quests, zone or planet quests in this this instance, different side quests, as well as class quests. Now, class quests are handled very well in this game as well. With the way that quests are delivered, your class is going to have a very interesting story that really engages with how your role in the galaxy develops. I think it's a really great way to get you engaged with both the actual story of the game as well as invested in the class that you're playing. All of this in addition to some awesome Star Wars characters as well as some awesome Star Wars music makes for a really enjoyable gameplay experience and is definitely something you should check out if you've never played Star Wars: The Old Republic before. It feels like I could go on and on and on about quests and how they are treated differently in these games, but I don't want this video to go on too much longer as I feel like it's already going to be a tremendously long video to begin with. With that said, as I mentioned at the start of the video, if there's something I've missed about one of these games, or if there's another game that you think handles quests super well, please bring that up in the comments below, or hey, check out that survey link down in the description or comments or wherever I put it, and share your thoughts on quests in these MMOs. As I mentioned, I do hope to do a follow-up video that will include that survey and its results, as well as any comments that sort of point out some of the things that I've missed in this video. Lastly, if you've already completed the quest I gave you at the start of this video and hit that like button, I do have some bonus objectives for you now. Now, if you haven't left a comment, I would love to hear your thoughts on this topic, so please do consider leaving a comment, and more importantly, if you would like to join this community where we do discuss everything MMO, please consider subscribing and hitting that notification button, as we'd love to have you in our future videos. With all that said, thanks for watching, we'll see you in the next video.